All right, Caroline, you want the intro?
Go for it. Let's just jump in.
Right.
Yeah, we've got Nate here with us, who's kind of been at Perch since the very start. Nate, tell us a little bit about you and what you do here, and we'll go from there.
Great. I'm Nate Jackson. I grew up here in Boston, about a mile away from where I grew up a long time ago. Really started my career as an engineer doing nuclear power plants for the Navy, and now I sell women's leggings on the internet, as with a number of other products that Perch sells. I started my career as the engineer, but went on to business school, which is actually where I met Chris Spell, our founder. He was recruiting for Bain & Company at the time there, and I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, and so consulting was a great path for that. I knew I was interested in business, but I'm not sure exactly what. And Chris was this charismatic ambassador for Bain, and I went and loved it there. Was there for 6 years. Did a lot of work with mergers and acquisitions. Did a lot of work with actually integrating businesses, just figuring out how to get stuff done in the sort of front lines of bringing two businesses together in some of my casework there. And then importantly, actually ran undergraduate recruiting for 3 years, where, was basically making offers to, helping to select which people to give an offer to at Bain, then convincing them of why they should choose Bain versus all of the other amazing opportunities that these people had. And did that for 3 years before I came to Perch and took on my current role, which I didn't exactly know it at the time, but is a really funny combination of all of those things, which is, my role is head of acquisitions. So that's everything from, thinking about corporate marketing, but really business development, which is going out and figuring out what products do we want to own, what brands do we want to own, and then working with sellers to negotiate the deal and get it closed. And it's really an interesting combination of like some of the business analysis that I did at Bain with the get your hands dirty and get things done and just figure out how to build in some of the integration work. And then, the decision of a college senior about where to, what wonderful career opportunity to take is very similar to a business owner who's trying to decide which, whether they should get $10 million from Perch in a certain structure or $9.8 million in a different structure from somebody else. And so, a lot of relationship building, a lot of trust, and, trying to build rapport and relationships while still thinking about getting somebody the right outcome there. So that's been my role here. When I first got in touch with Chris about Perch, it was still 3 people at that time. And I was this close to canceling my interview with him, or my lunch with him, because I was like, I'm just not going to join a 3-person startup. I've got a wife and 2 kids and a mortgage. This is crazy. But I met with him and heard about the business model, and I was like, but I think this is going to work. It seems like this should work. And Chris just turned me around. He was a very convincing guy. He got me to turn around in the midst of a 1-hour lunch. So that's a good trait in a CEO. So, what do I have to lose? So very gratefully joined back then and have been with it since we had 2 brands and 4 people to now, 75 brands and 200 people. Hard to keep track of at this point, but it's been really the ride of my life so far.
We'll get into the meat of the conversation in a second. But was it easier for Chris to convince you to turn that conversation around, for you to convince your wife that was a good idea at the time?
My wife is amazing. And so she was just really excited that I finally kind of was excited about one thing and not bouncing all over the place. Cause I was bouncing from maybe I'll buy a taco stand or maybe I'll go work at a private equity fund. She was like, you are getting too all over the place. And this is the most excited I've seen you about anything. So we'll be fine. I'm glad that you're happy. And so she's amazing in a bunch of ways, but that's one of the ways.
I feel like this is just...
I'll have to get her to listen to this podcast.
I was just going to say that clip right there may get you out of trouble.
That's a good one. It really is. I feel like this too.
I love my mom too. She's great.
I feel like she gets a lot of shout outs on Slack channels. My mom's going to be so happy to see this in the newspaper.
Yep. She buys stuff from our emails. She's a great customer too. So
perfect. Shout out to mom.
Yeah. Hi, Nate.
I have to bring that to the podcast. It'd be a new New pitch. So
Yeah.
this conversation really kind of got started based on, one of the things we value in the business is continuous learning and growth and development. And for us, one of the really organic ways to get there was just ask people what they suck at and how they sort of overcome that thing or things. I think usually the fun part about this, every time we ask people this question, everybody's like, I can only talk about one thing.
How do I cut this down?
Yeah. So
you're presuming that I suck at anything. So I don't know.
It's a different take. We should have prepped better. If I do ask you though, what do you suck at, Nate? What would you throw out there?
Yeah, I think it depends on the day that you ask me, but I would say a theme across like so many different types of work in personal situations and professional situations. You guys asked me this yesterday by email, I think, and I spent a cumulative 7 minutes thinking about it as I was making breakfast this morning. I think one of the main things that I could talk at length about is I suck at having hard conversations. It's not in my instinct to want to have a hard conversation, but a good like quarter of conversations that should be had are probably hard for somebody in some capacity. And I think my bias and so many people's bias is to just avoid those things. And that is pretty much always the wrong thing to do. And so, yeah, I think across a bunch of dimensions, I'm a harmony seeker. I want people to be happy. I'm a people pleaser. I just want people to feel good about their interactions with me, about their interactions with Perch, about their interactions with some guy at the grocery store, whatever it is. And maybe the grocery store is one place where I haven't had to have hard conversations, but lots of other places. Again, I'd say probably a quarter of the discussions that need to be had will be hard in some capacity, and my nature is to lean away from that when my nature needs to be to lean into that.
That's a really good one. A lot of parallels to some of the things I suck at. So what are some of the things that you do or the things that you put in your playbook to overcome that? Yeah.
I think a lot of it is just like acknowledging like any problem, the moment you acknowledge it and say it out loud to people kind of removes, and this is a theme about how to get into it too. It removes your ability to just ignore it and to pretend like you're not doing the bad thing that you're doing. And so even this is helpful for me, and it's been something I've been thinking about recently as well. But this can rear its head in so many places. I think about it like, in my own experiences at various points in my career where there's a bad outcome and I'm like dreading kind of confronting it. I hope that if I just close my eyes, it will go away, but it's not going to go away. And I know that it's going to like be a bad impact for the team or for the perceptions of my coworkers and my boss. And really the, bad news is good news if it's shared early enough is often the case, where my instinct is to like sometimes to just hide from it and pretend it doesn't exist. I think I've had enough amazing managers and supervisors over my career, way back to the beginning of my career as an engineer, to today with Chris, our CEO, who just does an amazing job of like having this attitude and mentality of learning from, like not dwelling on or sort of going out of your way to make somebody feel badly about a bad outcome, because guess what? The person probably already feels badly about the bad outcome. If you sense that they don't get it, that would be a different thing and could be a different lens. But I've just had enough experiences with great colleagues, great people on my team, great constituents and otherwise that have actually when they recognize that you also already know that this is a bad situation, and even if you start with like this is a hard conversation, but here's where we are, and start with the facts and build towards a solution, I think that resolves a bunch of things. And it's kind of like a horror movie where or like anything scary, the scariest thing is when you can't see it and you don't know what's going to come behind the door, but then it comes behind the door, you're like, okay, it's just whatever it is, and it's remarkably less scary than you think it is.
So one of the things that I suck at, and I talked about in our first podcast, is saying no. But I draw some parallels between these two conversations. One of the things from a management lens, and Caroline, this is one of the reasons that I index so hard on context and sort of over contextualizing everything, is because if I don't do that, and we move really fast in recruiting oftentimes, and sometimes like this becomes a big miss, you get behind the eight ball in that conversation. And a lot of times when I'm especially dealing with candidates, if I'm doing a good job and going slow, and being thoughtful about things, I can sort of see some of these things coming and cut them off at the pass, whether it's hard conversations in terms of like just not fits for roles or, but yeah, that's an awesome one. I don't know, Carol, I could probably tell you horror stories about my mistakes on that front.
No, I won't go that way. That's interesting though, like little phrase, bad news is good news if it's shared early enough. Have you seen that? I guess I'm wondering, as you've kind of progressed in your career, have you seen that with other folks who are maybe more junior than you, where you're able to start recognizing that in other folks now and kind of become more aware of it?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I think it's a message that I try to share actively and openly with my team, like just to, today even. I think, you can get into, like, I think so many people that are like, Perch attracts and hires team players that want their team to thrive and succeed and feel good. And sometimes you can get your head around, like, my role in this thing is to will this into existence. We might be looking at a deal that we're thinking about making an offer on, and you find yourself very quickly kind of leaning into it and kind of like, polishing questions around the edges and saying like, that'll be fine. But I think what I'm, it's a very, very real parallel here where bad news is good news early. Bad news is really bad news when it's late. And I won't lie, we've made that mistake where, like, we've under my leadership, we've kind of said, okay, this is, a gray area, or this is yellow, but, close enough. And, we eventually, like the seller, and you want what's best for the seller. You want a good outcome for the seller. You want, all the momentum is going in the direction of like, let's just be happy. Like let's all be excited about the wonderful thing that's about to happen. And I think, we have had enough, I think we've had experiences where that decision, if it were made even 2 weeks earlier, would have felt dramatically better for every party involved. Sometimes it's the sort of thing that you don't discover until pretty far down the path. But what I'm trying to do is to really, like, openly encourage when people share bad news, and to, like, visibly and publicly say thank you for like asking the hard question. Thank you for calling out this thing that nobody else has been asking about, but that you saw. If you see something, say something. And, like, even though we're kind of, the ball's rolling down the hill in a certain direction, like causing us all to pull up and ask the question. I'd say that's, I'm trying to both model as best as I can the willingness to be wrong and to change my mind on things that I thought I was thinking one way about, and then second, to really encourage and praise when people are saying things that I know are hard for them to say, and or it could be, I actually shared something that was wrong before, and when I correct it now, that in light of that mistake, I'm seeing this, like, never dwelling on, like, why did that mistake happen? If anybody did that to me, it would be happening a lot, and that's just not productive. But really celebrating, like, great, thank you. Now what do we do with this? And then also just really celebrating, independent thought and critical thinking, that because we do have a bunch of people that are just such team players, and again, are rooting for the sellers, rooting for the full team to be moving in a certain direction. And so it's probably because I've recruited people that I see, like, aspects of a similar sort of shared values that I personally have, and, like, I see them reflected in my team. And so there's some risk there that, like, we don't have enough people that are gonna, I think, in the Myers-Briggs, like, spike hard on the T dimension. I think we definitely have a good number of those, but we have more Fs than you might imagine. Sort of thinking versus feeling. But yeah, really just trying to celebrate that when you see it, and when you have people that are bringing up the hard conversations on the team.
I feel like Justin and I used to talk about this all the time, this concept of playing devil's advocate. And it's like, Justin's laughing because he probably told me this every single day, multiple times a day, but it's like, you don't even have to necessarily disagree with, whatever decision's being made, but make sure you bring up the question. so that
Yeah.
it becomes part of the culture, and also so that we're not, we don't end up with blind spots. And, if we're going to fail, we're going to fail fast, and we're going to fail hard and iterate and move on. And that's just kind of part of the cycle. So you don't get to that bad news too late situation.
Right.
Yeah. That was a great explanation. It's something I try to explain to people in terms of the culture here. So outside of this continuous learning and growth conversation, I do think there is an openness. I saw this from Chris right off the bat. But it is unlike, and I know that, I mean, I'm in a little bit of a pitch mode here too, but I would say that, like, I did find that within the people that I met from the first conversations, and Carolyn could probably tell you when we were having initial conversations, I was the most impressed with the people and the type of environment that it sounded like was trying to be built here. And that's one of the things I think I've enjoyed the most. And you can see that right down to, what happens on Slack with everybody in the business, which is super exciting to be part of. It really allows that to flourish. Cool.
Yeah. I don't mean this to be pitch mode at all. Because so for somebody that has to like pitch people and why they should choose Perch, I'm surprisingly not good at like having recorded pitches, but like what I have shared with my mom and my wife, like people personally in my life, about how I feel here, is that my job is not easy. It is not that there are not stressful decisions to be made, but I feel more secure than I ever have, like emotionally secure in a way, if I can use that framing. And I think because of explicitly a bunch of early experiences I had with Chris, who's my supervisor, around like various learnings and mistakes that I had early on, that like the first time I had a big gap, I was like wringing my hands and like dreading the conversation. And again, Chris's leadership model was like, it didn't phase him at all. It was like throwing a pebble at a giant. And I was expecting it to be like this gut punch of some sort. And like him setting the tone early on in a bunch of ways like that, I think made me really feel secure in a way that I didn't always at most other points in my career, not because of what other people were doing necessarily, but certainly not in a way that I felt that way now. And again, I think it's led me to kind of be flourishing in my best self. And I've never disagreed with my boss as openly and frequently as I do now. And it's really super productive. And sometimes, I come to his way of thinking. Sometimes he comes to mine. The same for everybody I work with, from the associate on my team to our head of M&A in Europe to Nathan in marketing. Like I think there's just been this really robustly healthy, like because we all have a shared outcome, which is like growing the business to be the best it can be. I think everyone can act in a bunch of good faith that like we're all seeking the same, like we're all trying to find our way in the same direction. And if somebody's pulling you back from the direction you're headed, it's not ever self-motivated. It's mostly just like, no, I sincerely think it's over here. I'm open to being wrong, but I think the path's this way.
I just have this thing in my head that's like, come to Perch. It's okay to disagree with people here. I've seen that go south in other places. No, this has been awesome. I know. All right. Carolyn,
normally we say
on timing
I know
too.
I was gonna say normally we say you can do a pitch at the end, but you kind of did it already.
I know. Are you hiring?
I am hiring. Yep, on the M&A team. So people that are have some interest in finance or corporate strategy, analytics, thinking about business performance and trajectory and what makes a good enduring brand. We have some roles on our marketing team that it's a one-man marketing show today with Nathan Szyminski, but I told him that he needs to duplicate himself. And so that's the goal that he's going off and doing. And then in business development as well, both in the US and Europe. So I'm hiring lots of places, lots of roles at Perch are hiring. So basically whatever it is that you want to do, there's something that you can do here at Perch.
That is true. It's a great pitch. Anything you can dream up, we could probably use.
Yeah.
It's true.
All right. Awesome.
All right. Thank you, Nate. I know.
Everybody.
Good timing. This has been a lot of fun. Thank you. And I'm sure we'll catch up with you again soon.
All right. Bye, Mom. Bye, Bridget.
Bye, guys. Thank you.